everyone. Sorry, I'll try that again. Welcome everyone. If you are here for the Oregon Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, you are in the right place. If not, welcome as well. So first off, for our agenda today, we have introductions and agenda review. And because we have so many folks on the call, we're just going to limit the introductions to OBPAC committee members, as well as the key staff that support our committee work. I can kick things off with an introduction to myself, and we'll just do it popcorn style. And then also as an icebreaker, along with your introductions, if you can just share your favorite place to bike or walk. So again, welcome. My name is How Hagedorn. I am the chair of OBPAC. For my day job, I work at Portland State University, and I'm the associate director for the Transportation Research and Education Center. And my favorite place to walk or run, actually, or hike is Forest Park, because I can do all of those things. I can walk, bike, hike, run, etc. So I will call on Emma next.
Good afternoon, everyone. Emma Newman. I am the vice chair of OBPAC. My day job is as the senior transportation planner with the city of Springfield, but I serve on OBPAC as an Oregonian. It's great to be here. New year, new work plan. I'm excited for today. Welcome, Lauren. Glad you could join us. I will pass it over to Aaron.
Everyone, my name is Aaron. I am the under 21 chair on OBPAC, and I'm currently a third year student studying civil engineering at Oregon State. And I just found out yesterday that I will be starting my CCOP internship for the city of Gresham in April. So really excited about that. And then my favorite place to bike would be the Barrett Creek Greenway down in Southern Oregon, where I'm originally from. I just love being able to, be able to commute from Ashland all the way to Medford on one single trail. And I'll pass it to Bill.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Bill Richard. I'm retired. I'm 75 years old. I'm retired. I spent the bulk of my professional career working for Congressman Jim Oberstar of 29 years, who was chairman of the House Transportation Committee in Washington, D.C. And the legislator who created the Safe Routes to School and a number of other bicycle-friendly references in the federal law. My favorite ride is the Springwater Corridor. I live in East Portland, and from the Springwater Corridor, you can get most anywhere. I was telling Jessica that I had a great bike accident on November 26th. I had just finished my 360th mile for the year when I caught my bike tire in a crack in the pavement, went over the handlebars and broke 3 bones in my knee, plus did a lot of damage to my face, broke my glasses. But I'm recovering from that, and I can't wait to get back on the bicycle. Thank you. My wife just corrected me. I rode 3,600 miles. It was my 3,600 miles when I had that accident. So she went well over 4,000 miles and beat me.
Well,
she's ahead of me this year.
It's impressive nonetheless. Mavis, you're here. How about introductions?
Hi, I'm Mavis Hartz. I am the merchant part of OBPAC, and my favorite place to walk and bike is basically everywhere, but the Umatilla Rim, it's gorgeous when it gets lots and lots of flowers on it. It's a mountain bike. Actually, it's multi-purpose, whatever. It's a pretty awesome one. And of course, the Mount Emily Recreation Area, which is like 4 miles from LeGrand, is incredible too, and I spent a lot of time there. And let's see, Lauren, how about you?
How about me? I was hoping these kind of questions would never come up, but they have. So I think I'm representing the tribes, Lauren Morris, and I don't ride a bike. I have 2 of them in my garage though, so I don't have a favorite riding trail. I do hiking though. So I don't know if there's anybody else.
That works too, Lauren, because we are a bike and walk committee.
So I'm still exploring Oregon, but I like the South Slough Trail that's here in Coos Bay. It's really pretty.
Great. So how about Jessica and then Karen, and then we'll wrap up the introductions after that.
All right, thanks, How. I'm Jessica Horning. I'm ODOT's Pedestrian and Bicycle Program Manager, and it was staffer, but now I have a fancy new title, Board Administrator for OBPAC. That comes with lots of new paperwork. And my favorite place to walk or bike is always the last place I've been, it seems like. So I did the hike of 10 Falls in Silver Falls over the weekend, and it was gorgeous.
Jessica, I'm so happy you said that, because I was like racking my brain too, and it does go back to the most recent place that I've hiked or tromped. So Karen Criswell, I'm the Public Transportation Division Administrator, and OBPAC is one of our 3 modal advisory committees that this division supports, as well as so the OBPAC, Public Transportation Advisory Committee, and Rail Advisory Committee, and then Safe Routes to School Advisory Committee is also supported by our division. And I was at Silver Falls a couple of weekends ago, but I took the 5.5-month-old German Shepherd pup that you all have to endure, hear me talking about and occasionally see pictures of. So I did not get to go down to the falls area, but we did enjoy tromping around some other parts of the park.
Great. Thanks for the introductions, everyone. Next on our agenda is public comment. So if there is anybody here that is interested in providing public comment, please raise your hand.
I haven't seen anyone in the chat share that they are here to provide public comment. The 2 comments that are in the packet for the meeting today that we received in advance, one is a concern about ADA accessibility due to camping and some other issues on the I-205 path. That one we have been working through our ADA program and with our partners at City of Portland in the impact reduction program that we contract with for camping and homeless issues to address those concerns. And so I think we've got that one wrapped up on the staff level. And the other was from let's see, sorry, I'm trying to admit people and go over public comment at the same time. The other one was from a Corvallis resident about reuse of the Van Buren Bridge, which is a historic structure that's being replaced with a new bridge with ped bike facilities as well. But there is a desire to from the community to repurpose the old bridge for a parallel shared use path. So those are the 2 that were received in advance.
Great. And I don't think anybody here is raising their hands to provide public comment. And so we will move on to the division administrator updates. So Karen, I'm going to hand things off to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And with that, I think we're ready to go straight into the Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act presentation. think we have about 40 minutes on the agenda for this agenda item. And I want to try to keep the presentation down to around 15 to 20 minutes. We've presented, or I've presented on IIJA to this committee before. So what I'm planning to do, if it's okay with you all, is for the slides that are kind of the high level reminder of where we've been slides, I'd like to move a bit more quickly through those so that we can spend more time on discussion and getting your feedback on the various scenarios that the commission approved that the agency put out for comment. And this was as of last Thursday. And then we also want to spend a bit more time, probably more so, talking about the proposed Great Streets program concept, which is contained in each of the scenarios, as well as the Safe Routes to School plussing up that we're looking at doing as part of the program, and then as well as some of the bike ped discretionary programs. So if that works for everyone, I'm not seeing heads nodding no. I'm going to jog on and ask Jessica to move on to the next slide, please. So as a background and reminder, the IIJA has about $1 trillion in funding over 5 years, about half of which is for transportation. And there are new programs for resilience, climate change, special funding for bridges, electrification of the transportation system, and about 100 million in discretionary grants. Next, please. In terms of what is in it for Oregon, we're seeing a plus up of about 200 million for public and active transportation in the form of formula funds, about a billion for highways and special programs, and then competitive grants in the form of about 36 billion. Excuse me. I'm in a little trouble here. Okay, next, please. And I think, okay. So what does it mean? What is happening? Okay, you have a different presentation than the one I have that I'm supposed to be giving.
Okay, I have the version from Kaz and Susan. That was for the committee, not the OTC
Karen
version.
updated a bit. I can pull up the most recent one and
Okay,
for her to run through.
sorry about that.
I think what we had the advanced version that we put out to the committee based on what we knew prior to the commission. And then we have the version that incorporates the input we got from the commission. So we had like a little switch off to do in the intervening like 2 work days.
It's loading right now. Hold on. Sorry to mess up the flow.
That's okay. I'm going to keep going because you all have heard some of this before. So in terms of what does it mean for public and active transportation, we're looking at about 30 million in additional direct funding for ped and bike programs, as well as grants for greenhouse gas reduction and climate resilience. Are you there, Susan? Like, I'm trying so hard. There we go. So slide 5, when you get to it. Fabulous, thank you. Okay, so sorry for that little glitch, folks. So for approximately 30 million in the additional funding will go to the Transportation Alternatives Program. So this is the largest dedicated source of federal dollars for ped and bike projects in terms of formula funds to the state of Oregon, that is. The funds need to be distributed through a competitive process to local agencies and are split between a direct allocation to the MPOs and a statewide program administered by ODOT, and the legislation changes that split from 50-50 to about 59-41 in favor of MPOs. And the historic 4 million recreation trails set aside will remain the same, and we will Oregon will continue to send that to state parks for their programming and allocation. Next, please. In the grant department, we've been analyzing the legislation and we've identified a range of potential opportunities. There are raised grants to the tune of 7.5 billion and funding for more car-free transportation projects. There's the new Reconnecting Communities pilot grants program, which has about $1 billion to restore communities split by highways and other major infrastructure projects. There's the Safe Street and Roads for All program, which is about $5 billion for local Vision Zero efforts. And there's also some grant programs that are authorized. So it's kind of the same way that we do our work in the state legislature in Oregon. You might authorize a policy or a program, but then the budget or the funding is done separately. So some programs that are authorized but not funded are the Healthy Streets program, Stopping Threats on Pedestrian program, and then the Active Transportation Infrastructure Investment program. Next, please. Public transportation. So what's important about this slide is just to give you an idea. Oftentimes in the STIP process, we don't talk about the full scope of public transportation funds that are coming to Oregon. And so what you're looking at here in this graphic is the amount of state funds that are projected between fiscal year 21 and 25 in that bottom row in green. The next layer is the federal baseline, which is the continuation of funding that we had been receiving. The next third layer up, which is in orange, if you can see that, is the federal funding, the IIJA federal funding, which is plussing up public transportation funding. And then in the yellow, which is really kind of invisible, is the OTC increase in public transportation funding, that nearly 35 million that the commission flexed to public transportation in the 24-27 STIP. Next, please. So turning to some of the provisions now that don't directly fund public and active transportation, but for which public and active transportation projects are eligible due to their greenhouse gas reduction and climate resilience features. I cannot speak. There's the carbon reduction program that we lovingly refer to as the CARP program because it's funny, as well as the Protect Climate Resilience program, and both will be administered by ODOT's climate office. The carbon reduction program is worth about 82 million over 5 years. And I'm not going to get into every single eligibility criteria, but within the bill, some of the things that are eligible are public transit projects, bike ped and non-motorized facilities, both on and off-road, advanced transportation and congestion management technologies, replacing street lighting and traffic control devices with energy efficient alternatives, congestion pricing, tolling, alternative fuels project, which includes supportive infrastructure and new equipment purchases, and diesel retrofits. So in terms of who the money goes to, about a third of it will be allocated directly to the Portland, Eugene, and Salem metro areas. The ODOT will consult with smaller communities with the funding program for about another third of it. And then the final third will have discretion over spending. Let's see, I had some questions. I see some questions. Are there some questions in the chat? Acronyms, raise, protect. Yes, acronyms. Thank you for highlighting that. So we'll see if my memory, I'm going to keep going because I literally don't know what all of the acronyms mean myself. And I'm going to turn to staff who are supporting the conversation to de-acronymize me in the chat. That's not a real word, but I made it so. So our strategy, next please. The approach that we're taking in this, figuring out how to program the IIJA funds is similar to what we have typically done in the 24-27 STIP process, probably with some additional enhancements. Our goal is to bring the commission a proposal for allocating the funding among the different categories and at the different dollar amount levels by the end of March. It is important, again, for us to allocate the funds quickly so we can start identifying the projects and get the funding obligated and get get the work under construction. We have scant, based on federal fiscal year, we have about 10 months or so to make that happen. And if we are not able to obligate the funds and get the work going, we lose the funding. There's not an ability to roll this funding forward. So that's part of why we're under a lot of pressure on this. We'll be taking that into consideration as we figure out what we want to do. Next, please. So to make sure that you have the information that you need to provide effective feedback to us, I want to give you a quick overview of the STIP and our strategic approach that underpins it. It's our main discretionary fund. It's decided by the commission on a 4-year, not 5-year, on a 4-year rolling basis. And the 24-27 STIP allocation, so which buckets or categories of funding are we going to choose? That was decided by the commission in 2020. And now we're in the scoping process to figure out exactly which projects and what is contained in those projects. The IIJA really crosses over 2 STIP funding cycles, the 21-24 period, as well as the 24-27. And so if everything else is held equal, it will increase our funding in the 24-27 from 2.5 billion to 2.95 billion. So just to give you an idea of the order of magnitude. Next, please. As with just about everything we're doing these days, the strategic action plan is the underpinning of our policy and our foundations for the work that we're doing. I'm going to move past that. You all have seen that slide many times before. Next, please. So the intent of this slide is to just give you a better idea of the totality of what's in IIJA. Much of it is earmarked for specific types of projects, and this is built into the legislation and means that Oregon only has discretion over about 400 million of the 1.2 billion. So you can see from the pie chart that about a quarter goes to sustainable transportation programs like transit, active transportation, the new carbon reduction program, and EV charging programs. A similar portion will go to the fix-it programs for bridges and resilience, and then the remainder will go to safety and local governments and some other miscellaneous areas. It is important to note that the local governments will actually receive a lot more than 9% because they also get portions of funding that comes in other categories such as carbon reduction, safety, our bike ped programs, as well as the bridge program. Next, please. As a reminder, these are the ways in which the commission is taking public and stakeholder views into account, just as a reminder. Next, please. And then another reminder, this is a summary of the major themes of public comment from the 24-27 STIP, which we used as a starting point for thinking about the allocation of these funds. And I think you'll see some different things in the allocations because of it. Next, please. So last time for 24-27, we looked at kind of 3 broad categories: fix it, enhance highway, public and active transportation, and then we had some other, smaller categories such as the ADA, accessibility, and local programs. And what we brought back this time is some different investment areas, because we think and we see that our needs as a state have evolved. So there's still some of the same program areas. So fix it, enhance highway, ADA accessibility, great streets is new, safe routes to school we called out on its own, local climate planning. So that relates to implementation and helping local agencies to implement the amendments to the transportation planning rule, which are anticipated later this year. Operations and maintenance, match for discretionary grants, and then finally business and workforce development, which is an area that we have not spent enough time or resources in historically, which we think is pretty important to our social equity program. Next, please. So in terms of kind of the foundation of information for existing conditions, This graphic is showing two existing sets of existing conditions. One is for the pavement and the other is for the condition of bridges in Oregon. The key issue for pavement is that funding has been flat for the past 20 years. It has not kept pace with inflation, and the condition has started to decline since 2020 and will continue to accelerate without increased funding. We do have a key legislative key performance measure of keeping the pavement in a certain good condition of 85%, and we are projected to fall below that within the 24 to 27 STIP. This current funding that's showing is without IIJA. So if funding from IIJA increases by about 3%, falling below the key performance measure is pushed out into the 27-30 timeframe. Bridges. Funding for bridge condition projects has fallen about 25% over the last decade, and even after HB 2017. IIJA bridge money will make this funding consistent with historic funding levels, considering inflation. And it's approximately 1/4 of the need if we're looking at the 20-year horizon. We have something like 2,800 bridges in Oregon, and we're currently on a 900-year replacement cycle. Next, please. For enhanced highway, the 24-27 STIP has limited funding for that, 65 million, and that was really focused on, or has been focused on, congestion relief and freight movement projects. And you can see it listed some of the priorities for enhanced highway, depending on the amount of funding that might be allocated there. We have some underfunded projects from House Bill 2017, and then going further down the 24-27 STIP list. Next, please. Great streets, finally, a topic that I really, really enjoy talking about. So part of what I'm going to say here is not going to be news to any of you, because this is feedback that you've been giving us for years, and I'm really excited that we're developing this program and moving on this concept. So as you all know, ODOT highways serve as main streets for many communities. They should be safe and accessible for all users, including people walking, biking, and rolling. However, many of the locations are more focused on moving large volumes of cars and trucks. They're more about throughput than to-put. And I think this is in some areas really due to communities growing up around state highways. And because our federal and state funding programs have been historically focused on specific modes rather than the overall experience of everyone who's using the street. So that means that we have programs for ADA access, another one for bike lanes, another one for pavements, another one for crossing safety. And what happens is that ODOT and local jurisdictions cobble together funding from multiple sources to build streets that meet the needs of all users. And we think that's something that needs to change. In this proposal, it's sort of a companion piece to our strategic action plan initiative around improving equitable access to public and active transportation. And this is coming at it from another direction, in that it's creating a pot of money to fund these great street improvements. So this intent is to break down those silos, help the agency design, fund, and build complete streets that meet community needs. We plan to focus on state highways that operate as main streets in both rural and urban communities. And our current plan is to hold an internal competitive grant selection process where projects are scored on criteria such as equity. How does the project reduce barriers for historically marginalized communities to safely walk, bike, or use transit? Need. The needs are vast. And so how do we look at and apply this needs assessment to the most pressing needs? When we look at safety, we look at things like local support, and local support will be extremely important. That different communities have different resources available to them. So we're looking at a broad definition of support. So is the project one that has had quality community engagement? Is the local jurisdiction willing to help reduce some of the project costs through right-of-way contributions or waiving permits or other kinds of things? And then we're also planning on using some portion of the fund for project development. We know that oftentimes we have a really hard time having projects in the pipeline that are ready enough so that they are eligible for federal discretionary grant applications or for grant applications for other programs. Next, please, and then we will definitely come back to this topic in safe routes. So safe routes to school. Again, you all know this is an extremely important program. It's an extremely popular program. Our most recent competitive cycle, the request for funding outpaced the funding available at 4-to-1. And we also know, and we are working on, Jessica and team are working on completing the full review of bike and ped needs, which should be done pretty soon. But we know that our urban sidewalk network is 50% complete. Our urban bicycle network is 60% complete. And 40% of bike and ped paths in Oregon are in poor condition, meaning they can't be used safely by people with mobility devices or strollers. And our most recent estimate is that it would take 5.2 billion or 180 million a year to complete bike and ped facilities along those urban state highways. I think the final point I will make on need, and you probably noticed that we are not proposing to plus up public transportation through the flexible funds, and that is because the IIJA formula funding is sending an additional 200 million to Oregon for public transportation, most of which will go directly to the large and small urban providers, with about 31 million flowing through ODOT to rural providers. Next, please. Local climate planning. So Department of Land Conservation, I'm missing something with one of my Ds. Development Land Conservation is working on updating their transportation planning rule. And we also have Governor Brown's eco rule. And so we think this local climate planning work can help local communities to meet various local climate planning requirements. ADA accessibility, next please. Continuing to work on meeting our commitments under the settlement agreement. And we have quite a lot of backlog to continue to work through. So this additional funding would point at that. Operations and maintenance next. So ODOT's currently facing a 500 million shortfall in operations and maintenance funding for maintenance. So that's Department of Motor Vehicles, Commerce and Compliance Division, and Administration, General Agency Administration through 2029. The IIJA will increase the operation and maintenance deficit due to increased match and staffing costs. So we're looking at setting aside a small portion of funds to federalize operations and maintenance. And part of what that means is we would receive federal funds that we would apply to certain projects that we might have otherwise used state funds for. And then that frees up those state funds to then be used for operations and maintenance. Federal funds aren't eligible to be used directly for operations and maintenance. So next, please. Match for competitive grants. I have touched on this before, but the important part is the fourth bullet here, which is that, again, this is a kind of a federalizing money piece. So using, again, federal funds to apply it to state projects, which frees up state funds that we can then turn around and use as match for federal funds. So we're planning an additional set aside of 40 million as match for state funds. And typically that's somewhere in the realm of a 4-to-1, magnify your state funds by 4. Next, please. Business and workforce development. So having a larger volume of projects means we need more contractors, subcontractors, and expanding a workforce. We need a better pipeline. We need to better support apprenticeship programs. We need to provide better support to BIPOC and women-owned businesses to help them to navigate our processes, to help them to be more successful in pursuing projects and winning those projects. So that I promised you I was going to be short, and I wasn't, you guys. I stunk that up. So the flexible funding scenarios. I think this first slide is probably one. So this is showing the different scenarios. There's a fix-it scenario, which invests more heavily in the fix-it program. The public and active transportation scenario has public and active transportation having a larger portion, enhanced highway, much as it sounds, and then the balanced scenario, which basically is an equal amount of funding to those three major bucket areas. Next, please. So this is looking more specifically at the dollar amounts for each of those programs. So in Fix It, you see $107 million carve out. Next, please. Public and active transportation. We've identified 75 million for Great Streets and then 31 million for safe routes to school under this scenario. Next, please. Enhanced highway shifts that large bucket over to enhance at 107 million. Next, please. And then the balanced one. So in the balanced scenario, that's 50 million for Great Streets, 22 million for safe routes. And then next, please. So process. So always the question, what's the timing? What are the potential actions from OBPAC? And when do things, quote, need to be done by? So with the commission's action last week, they approved the agency to go and get comments on these different scenarios to take back to the commission. So in February, we're going to be opening up an online, putting up an online open house. We're also doing the visits like we're doing today with our modal advisory committees to get your feedback. And then we'll be on February 17th, the commission will be meeting, and that will be the place where we're going to be talking about the new programs and some of the proposals for how the new programs might work. March 10th is when the commission will receive public comment on funding options and give us their feedback. So that's a place where they could say, no, we want to create a new scenario, or we want to look more closely at this scenario, or what would it look like to do this or that. Last time, that's exactly what they did. They came up with something that was yet again different from the starting point. And then they'll come back again and continue to deliberate and hopefully approve a funding allocation at their March 30th meeting. So in terms of the OBPAC, I will turn it back to, I think, Jessica, who can, I think, probably tell you about your options in terms of historically. I know you've done written letters or how is provided testimony at times. I think all of those options are available to you, but mostly we want to hear your thoughts and feedback on the various scenarios, as well as the various funding programs and whatever else you want to tell us. I think we have a couple more slides though. Yeah, so here's the how to provide feedback and the comments. And then there's one beyond that, which is just how to follow up that, but you already know that. Oh, Jessica, thank you. And I'm just getting back to the chat.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions in the chat. One from Emma of, do we know if bike share is eligible for CARP, the carbon reduction program? Yeah.
Good question. I do not, but we can follow up on that.
Yep. And then if the STIP funds were forecast with pre-inflation prices, will there be remaining funds for additional projects? I think you kind of covered that. It's a question from one of our guests.
That's a very good question. And I think the answer is no. There's a lot of factors that go into what it takes and what it costs to deliver projects. And we are operating with a number of things that are working against us right now. So bids that are coming in on projects are coming in much higher. That's because of reductions in workforce. Contractors are looking at paying overtime, materials costs have gone up. So I think when you start to look at all those different variables in play, it is not favorable for us in that way.
Go for it, Hal.
Okay, Karen, I have a question. Thank you for that great presentation. I was having, there's so many numbers that you threw out and I was trying to track them and make some sense into it. I think one important thing for me is when active transportation is lumped into public transportation, it doesn't give us a clear enough picture of how much is invested. So for example, I think on one of the slides, you had noted 200 million for public and active transportation, and I got really excited. And then when it came down to it, was only 30 million of that was going to bike and ped. And so I think that is just an example of why it is important to just separate that.
Yep.
And then another question I had is only 3% of the IIJA going to active transportation? I think in the pie chart that you were showing,
Back to it.
I think it said 3%.
Yeah, it's slide 12.
And so historically, that is what ODOT has invested in active transportation from federal funds. And I'm really disappointed that that is still just 3% given like this new, infusion of funds.
Let me clarify.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's fine.
This is based on the formula. So this is based on what is in the bill, and based on the formula, this is the amount. This is like the starting point based on formula. So then you have the additional 400 million. That's the flexible funds. And then that's what we're trying to figure out is the allocation of the flexible funds. So then from there, you look at the different funding scenarios, and there's greater and lesser amounts for active transportation, depending on the funding scenario.
Right.
And I think that's, yeah.
And I really appreciate seeing the graphic for the bridge and the pavement. I'd love to see the same graphic for bike ped investments for the past 50 years. Because I don't think we've ever funded it adequately. And I think if we're going to talk about existing conditions, I think active transportation needs a similar graph for what has been invested, and it's been flat-ish over the past 50 years. So
I could not agree more, and I thank you for that feedback, Hal.
And that's it for now.
And we'll have that bar chart in the performance measures agenda item that we're talking about a little bit later. Emma?
I have a number of things, but I'm wondering if any other committee members want to speak first, because I always have comments and I want to make sure that I'm sharing the airtime. So anyone else have questions or comments before I go? Okay, seeing blank stares and no one leaping to the opportunity, I will share a couple things. One, I am very, very happy, like Karen, about the Great Streets program. It is touching on so many different benefits. So you can fund a Great Streets project and have equity, safety, accessibility, multimodal, greenhouse gas emission reduction, and economic benefits all in one. This is not a new topic, as you said. And it's been very challenging to deliver those types of projects in the siloed existing STIP system. So I'm really glad to see that being introduced. I think it would be helpful in how ODOT is presenting it to give people a sense of scale. So when I was thinking this through in my mind, I'm thinking about projects that I know about. So it's $185 million for 82nd Avenue. And I think that's about 7 miles of urban arterial roadway. We're looking at about 164 million for Main Street, Oregon 126 here in Springfield for about 5 miles, and that includes enhanced corridor transit. And the largest Great Streets proposal is looking at the public and active transportation scenario 2, and that would be $75 million. So in my mind, I'm equating that to a couple phases that are parts of projects in a few locations in the state of Oregon. And so just thinking through the magnitude and how far, or in this case, not far, it would go, I think it's really helpful to both people who may be commenting on the different scenarios, but also for the commissioners to think about the functionality of that program, because it's really trying to bridge the gap that has existed previously. So I would love to see it funded at least at the 75 million presented in the scenario 2 with the public and active transportation. Appreciate the follow-up on the bike share with regards to the CART program. My only other question at this point is the internal competitive grant selection process for the Great Streets that you mentioned, Karen. Do you know if cities who have already had formerly ODOT-owned urban arterials transferred to them, would they be eligible for the funding? And I'm asking from a user perspective, if someone's living in a community and trying to walk across the street or bike across the street, they don't care whether ODOT or the local city owns it. They want to get to their destination safely. And so just wondering if the Great Streets program is set up to be accessible to any and all jurisdictions who own these types of facilities in the state to improve them.
As it's currently conceptualized, no, it would not, local streets would not be eligible for the Great Street pot. It would just be ODOT roads.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. I mean, given that there's not very much funding in that pot, even at the most ambitiously funded, I think that, thank you for just clarifying. And then the balanced scenario, I just want to say, I'm a little tired of seeing scenarios like that coming out from these STIP discussions. In the strategic action plan and what I'm hearing OTC share is their vision, I'm hearing that they want to be visionary leaders and really lead on these important issues of our time. And I think the balanced scenario is just saying, hey, we don't want to really do anything well. We'll just do everything kind of so-so. And so I'm hoping that we'll see some strong leadership from the commission in using these additional flexible funds. Thank you.
Emma, thank you for that comment very much. You have no idea how it resonates, because I think as thinly stretched as everyone is, some days it just feels like, what should we focus on and what do we really want to prioritize and do well, or am I going to just fail at something? So I know it's not about me, but I was like, that's why I'm smiling really large at that for multiple reasons. But thank you for that feedback and for those comments. I really appreciate it. See. So I guess I said I was going to turn it to Jessica, but so how really the question for you then as chair and for the committee, we are of course writing down your comments, and we will be putting that back into the feedback that goes back to the OTC. So as always, there's a question of whether you would like to write a formal comment letter, if you want to spend more time with the content, because I feel like I turned on the fire hose and was just like virtually hosing you guys down for 20 minutes. That felt really rushed. And it doesn't feel like we've created much space for dialogue. So I don't know what your thoughts are. And if we go to, in terms of the timing, we have some time for when comments will be due back to the commission. So really we have the month of February, I think. The other piece that I wanted to mention to you, gosh, it would have been a complete fail if I didn't do this. The division, we are planning to once again pull together a meeting of representatives of the various modal advisory committees to have a deeper conversation, not only about the scenarios, but about some of the programs. So within Great Streets, conversation about that, conversations about if we're plussing up safe routes to school, and we have some different dollar amount options. Are there existing programs we want to plus up? Are there some new things that we want to make eligible for funding that haven't historically been eligible for funding? And so I think those conversations will be really important. And we're also thinking about structuring that meeting a bit differently this time to potentially build in breakout rooms and to potentially invite more people into the conversation. So there's potentially the hub of it where the advisory committee representatives are having, you know, that conversation together, but then some breakouts that enable more participants and community members to be engaged. So that will be coming. So you should be seeing an invitation for that soon, hopefully.
Yeah, that sounds great, Karen. And I personally would appreciate some more time to digest the information. It was a lot of things, numbers and programs and acronyms thrown out. And I know that I was trying to track as well as I could, and I'm sure I missed some things. So, and I'm happy to start like once that I think you've shared the PowerPoint presentation with us, but I'm happy to start a document that our committee members can provide comments on so that we can pull together a letter to be submitted to the OTC at some point. So.
Okay. And you may even consider kind of waiting to finalize that until after we have the multimodal conversation, and where we're going to be able to get into some of this in a bit more depth than we were able to today.
Yeah, absolutely. Jessica, before you go, there are some comments by Sarah Lou Heath in the comments, and I'm wondering, Sarah, if you would feel comfortable enough unmuting and sharing those comments with us, because sometimes I think it's better just to hear it versus trying to read it for context.
Oh, sure. Thanks. I work with COLPAC in Northwest Oregon, and this is a particular example in Astoria where there's Highway 101 splits and runs in 2 lanes down Commercial and 2 other lanes down Marine Drive. And so there's 1 block of non-ODOT roads between the highway. So depending on how granular you are with ODOT streets, it would really prevent a holistic approach to upgrading these sidewalks and making them accessible. And so those, you know, as your rulemaking and such, there's some odd considerations where you might just think of context of a whole project instead of.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that comment and that consideration. We have a long ways to go to get that program developed. So thank you very much for that.
Sure.
All right. I hate to brain vomit and run, but that is exactly what I am doing today.
Jessica, did you have something to add before Karen leaves, or?
It was just around logistics for next steps, since the next opportunity for public comment with OTC is coming up February 17th, which is closer.
So February 17th, while they will take public comment, that meeting is really about, here's information about the new programs, Protect and CARP. So they really intend to have the entire month of February being a time for information exchange, dialogue, and then collecting comment. So I wouldn't be too worried about the February 17 time period. Just FYI. Okay. But you could.
But well, it's an opportunity. And then March 30th, the next meeting is right after the next OBPAC meeting. So just with the public meeting rules, and we can't collaboratively edit online a letter with the whole committee. And I think the last letter to how have been all on your plate to do. Might recommend if there is a subgroup, a working group that wants to form to kind of focus on this and compiling the feedback. So there's a few folks who can focus on compiling OBPAC's comments, and staff can provide a little bit of support on clarifying what some of the programs are and getting a little bit more into the details. on this topic, that would be an option.
But I could draft something and email it to folks and they can send me comments directly.
Sure.
Okay. Well, we can do it that way too.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't have to be like a Google,
Yeah, just
edit.
providing options for how you might divide the work on this one.
And then Emma.
Thank you. Since Karen has to run early, I had two questions specifically for her. One was related to our work plan with the outreach effort. We're going to have a work group meeting, and so I wanted to check your availability. And I think Kaz might be here too. At our last meeting, we decided we'd do a meeting. We haven't scheduled that quite yet, so we're super close. If you can get us your availability for that, that would be wonderful. And then I was curious, I had heard that Nikotris Perkins and Karen Rowe had both left the agency. So I'm wondering if you could just provide a little bit more information about staffing updates and what we should be aware of.
Yeah, so I actually just learned today that we just got the consultant under contract that's going to help us with the recruitment for both of those positions. And I think there's a couple of other executive recruitments that are going to be happening or in the works. Our HR director has also or will be leaving this month for another opportunity. So I think it is going to be some period of time before their replacements will be hired. But I know those things are high priorities for the agency and trust and hope that they will happen soon. But definitely we have Mac Land is the interim delivery and operations administrator, and that's a name that should be familiar to many of you. And then the assistant directors have sort of divvied up the major bodies of Nikotris's work with support from others. So for example, Kaz and I are doing some work to help support some of the offices and initiatives. And so I think we're limping along a bit and trying not to lose too much momentum without Nikotris, would be my other comment. And I really do have to leave now. Apologies. I physically have to be in a room somewhere else, if you can believe that. I don't even know what's happening right now. Thank you very much,
Thank
everyone.
Thanks, Karen. Bye.
Bye.
And one real quick on that staffing note, Emma, just for the committee, since this is another position that folks in this group are probably interested in, Maria Sippen, who was our Region 1 Active Transportation Liaison, has moved on to a new position with the Safe Routes to School partnership. So happily, we still get to keep her in the regional active transportation family, but we will be recruiting for a new person in that position in Region 1 shortly as well. So I will look forward to you all helping distribute that and help us find a good new person.
Thank you, Jessica. And I just want to say I really appreciated Maria's support of our committee work in Astoria, or our pre-pandemic retreat. We did some really great work with her, and she was so integral to ODOT's equity work. So between her and Nikotris leaving, I feel like that's two big losses for the agency and some pretty big shoes to fill.
All right, I've lost track of the agenda on my computer, but I have it back up now. So we are, we're about 10 minutes behind. I think we're okay though. Next up on the agenda is committee business. So the first thing is to review and approve minutes. So hopefully committee members have had a chance to be able to review the minutes. And if you have, we can vote on them. Or does anybody have any questions regarding the minutes or comments? Okay, I see blank looks and avoiding the screen, so no comments. So does anyone want to motion to approve? Is that how I always forget the order of operations here?
So move.
I second.
All in agreement, give you a thumbs up. Lauren, how do you vote?
I was not here, so I abstained.
Okay, okay, great. All right, I believe we have consensus, so the minutes have been approved. Okay, next up is the work plan updates. Jessica, if you have a copy of it, do you want to pull it up?
Do that real quickly.
And I apologize to committee members because I did not get a chance to speak with all of you about the work plan. But when Jessica and I met earlier in January, we thought it would be good to, as the start of the year, to review our work plan and just take a look at it and update it for the next biennium, so 2022 to 2024, and I think that's the time frame that we have been working with. Based on what we believe were the various interests of our committee members, we divvied up the focus areas and assigned various leaders and co-leaders to each of the focus areas. And currently we have, I believe, 4 focus areas: legislative policy, let me just see, policy, ODOT policy adoption and implementation. Thanks, Jessica. Expanding funding policy and programs. And then the 4th one is the organizational health. And then we added outreach to that. And so I think the plan is just at this meeting, we won't make the revisions here, but perhaps identify who the leads are and then perhaps talk at a high level some of the goals that we want to accomplish, and then take the next month or so for the folks who are assigned to each of the focus areas to dig deeper into updating the tactics, the goals, and the outcomes and accomplishments. So how does that sound to folks?
How that works for me, I'm just looking at the agenda and seeing that we may have flipped 2 agenda items.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I think we had some
Oh,
brief
yeah,
updates,
sorry.
and then we were
Okay.
going to take a break before diving into this. So I think that was a great intro to where we're headed after the break.
Sure. Okay. Okay. Sorry about that. Jessica, you should have stopped me.
Sorry, I am trying not to pull up too many documents while I'm sharing my screen. So
Yeah, I feel the same way. I have like so many screens up. I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I? And I only have one monitor. It's easier when I have dual monitors. So, okay. I apologize for flipping the agenda items. So let's get back to the work plan updates. And the first item there is Emma and Aaron on outreach to ACTS and BPAC, the various committees and next steps.
Yeah, Emma touched on it a little bit, but we're gonna be setting up a meeting. Lauren has also volunteered to be part of that outreach too. So hopefully we can set up a time that works for all of us in early February to kind of create a plan of what we want to do some outreach to the ACTS and the BPACs and the modal committees.
would anyone object to pulling up calendars and finding a time to pencil in while we're all together rather than doing a doodle?
My goal is to have that by the end of this meeting. Kaz, if you were there, I private messaged you the times that worked for Lauren, Aaron, and me. And so if any of those times work for you, we're going to get it scheduled this afternoon to fulfill Jessica's request.
Okay, if you can, just in case Kaz is not following along, if you can chat them to me, I can pull up Kaz and Karen's calendars. If those are times that you and Aaron and Lauren have found that work.
Thanks for the inside scoop. There you go.
Thank you. That's all I needed.
Okay, great. Thanks for that update. Oregon Transportation Plan, Mavis and Jessica.
Boy, it's a lot of fun. Woohoo! Your turn, Jessica.
So I think I looped in a few of you that I have been invited to sit on the safety working group for the Oregon Transportation Plan update. So part of the structure for this update is that there is the overarching policy advisory committee that Mavis is sitting on. So as in all things, Mavis is my boss for the Oregon Transportation Plan update. And then there are multiple topic specific working groups that are providing recommendations to that policy advisory committee that Mavis and others are on. So the safety working group will, and along with the other topic specific groups, will be meeting 6 times over the course of the OTP update and providing recommendations on policies for in those topic areas. One of the questions that came up during the safety working group was really if there was one big game changer policy or new approach to safety that was incorporated into this Oregon Transportation Plan update, what would that be? So if this group has thoughts on that, the working group definitely was interested in a focus on speed, on a safe systems design approach. So that is the new approach of designing transportation facilities, acknowledging that humans are fallible, crashes are inevitable. We should design the system in a way that makes sure that when those crashes happen, they're going to be minor. People aren't going to be seriously injured or killed. So a lot of speed management, traffic calming, things like that. So yeah, those are kind of the topics that group will be continuing to work through, but just wanted to provide an update to the group and see if there was any feedback.
I don't have any feedback, but I think that's great that you've been invited to join that working group. I know that last year was not a good year for fatalities, and this year we already have 8 fatalities. Last year there were 6, and so it's a record number year. So I just feel like everything we're doing is not working. So I don't know what the solution is, but I just think the number of traffic fatalities just keeps on increasing, and I don't know if it's getting enough attention from leadership. So, and I just wanted to share that I've been invited, not in my OBPAC capacity, but to sit on the modeling and analysis work group for the OTP. So it's not really like, I think it's a little bit different than the safety working group where you're not, so the modeling analysis group is just sort of trying to provide the data that would help to drive the decisions within the plan. So I think there are a lot that we can provide feedback and comment on as it pertains to biking and walking and transit, to making sure that it shows up in the analysis and modeling work.
I think that's one thing that they're running into is, the evidence that would drive a change is not necessarily available.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's easy, I don't think it's going to be available over the next year either. So I think we need to make better decisions with the data that we have. So, and again, I don't know what the solution is, but that's a great point, Mavis. All right, Emma, you're up next with another acronym, easy.
Yes, acronym fun. So I'm going to give a brief overview of the first meeting that I attended, and I'd love all of you to listen up because at the end of this, I'm going to be asking one of you to take over the second meeting because it conflicts with a scheduling conflict that I have. So I attended their 2 meetings. EASY stands for Equitable Active Safety Improvement Evaluation, and it's a DOT peer exchange. So essentially, the purpose of this is to improve outcomes for quick response and incorporate social equity into decision-making portions of projects, really focus on active transportation. There was acknowledgement that the BIPOC pedestrian safety discrepancy exists that was documented in ODOT's analysis a few years ago, and a desire to respond faster to the bike ped safety needs in an equitable way. Jessica Horning and Christy Wilson McDaniel, who runs the APSIP program, are co-leads on the project. And there were attendees from a number of different DOTs. So we had FHWA Oregon, and then departments of transportation from Maine, Minnesota, Ohio, Oregon, Washington, and me representing OBPAC. So that'll be one of you next time. The two questions that we focused on in the first meeting were, one, in your active transportation safety grant programs, do you incorporate social equity? And then kind of a lot of sub questions of if so, how? And then the second question was, what programs do you have to deliver quick fix active transportation safety projects? And it was really interesting. I think it's helpful to have a peer exchange and hear from different states, kind of what they're doing, what they're finding success with, what we could learn from each other, things that aren't going so well, and are there good examples to look to? My overall sense was that Oregon is near the front, if not in the lead, for quite a bit of this work. So on the one hand, that's good for Oregon, but it also really says something about the state of this type of work nationally that's quite concerning. There's some good work happening, but another key takeaway was that often it's siloed within the active transportation programs and not really embedded throughout the entire Department of Transportation resource allocation and work. I asked a question about, okay, is this just within your active transportation programs, or how does this work across like the entire DOT? And there was a lot of silence and not a lot of great answers shared. There was agreement that there's currently quite a bit of difficulty with having those programs kind of working together and producing multimodal outcomes. So we're not alone in that, but I think that's really important to overcome that challenge to really serve the needs of people. I was pleased to hear that ODOT's 24-27 SIP does include an equity tab that has a number of different questions to answer that need to be considered for all programs, so that's good. Florida had some push button contracts, which are essentially contracts where projects can get delivered in the 3 to 6 month time frame. It's responsive to local needs. They would be projects that have limited right of way, but they could be enhanced crossings, intersection improvements. And they also talked about their good coordination across planning and traffic operations. It seems like the work groups really collaborate and work well together. Another takeaway was that our ORS 366215, the freight reduction review routes and the mobility advisory committee process, seems quite unique to Oregon. Other states don't seem to have this process. And I think that with that element, we have some more review and delays in the process that may add extra time beyond some of the other state DOTs and how they're able to be quick and responsive with their projects. And then one of the really cool examples that I think everyone involved in the meeting was inspired by is Ohio. They have a pedestrian safety improvement project where they spent $11.5 million to quickly implement pedestrian safety in the 8 largest cities in the state. They picked locations for new crossings and installed 390 crossings in a 2-year time frame. My estimate is that that's about $30,000 per crossing average cost. The crossings range from ADA ramps to markings to crossings with refuge islands to full rectangular rapid flashing beacons. So that seemed really cool, and I would love to see a similar effort like that happen here in Oregon. At last count, some of the ADA ramps that we're seeing built locally were about 10 times that cost for just doing ADA ramps, not even the more enhanced crossing options. So that's my summary. The next meeting is on Friday, January 18th, and it's from 8 to 10 a.m. And I would love to have someone else cover that for me since I am not available.
Emma, is it February or did you say January? Is it February?
I'll say February.
Okay.
February.
I wonder if the email I pulled it from was wrong or I'm still stuck in January. It's gonna be February because January has passed.
So it's a Friday morning.
Friday, February 18th, 8 to 10.
And this one will be talking a little bit more about safety and crash data end of things, which is also a focus of the project.
If no one can
Anyone?
make it, ask Robert, because Robert is doing the transportation safety action plan stuff within our work program. I don't know if he's available, but he could be a backup option.
So I could sit in if Robert can't. So I will give Robert first dibs.
Okay, I can follow up with him and see if he's available. We'll go from there.
Thank you.
All right, and Jessica, recruitment update.
All right, so we need to recruit a new local government and land use representative for the committee to replace Michael Black. I went back into our pile of applicants and into the statute. Those are two pieces, and got the clarity that those are two pieces that need to be in one person. So the requirements of that position are you need to be an employee of local government and somehow be involved in land use in that position. Unfortunately, because we have the governor's office of boards and commissions has switched management of all of the governor and Senate appointed committees over into the new workday system. We need everyone going forward that can be considered for a governor appointed position to submit via that new workday application. So there are some folks in our old pile of applicants who could potentially be a fit for the position, but we need to ask them to go ahead and reapply through the new system. And if we are going to do that, I feel like we might as well do a new recruitment and see if there are other folks who meet those criteria that would be interested. So I drafted up a recruitment using the template we used for the last several. Didn't receive any comments from anyone. So unless there are comments from the group, now we'll go ahead and send out that recruitment announcement via the regular Gov delivery and ask for help from you all distributing it to your networks. I think since this one is a local government employee requirement, there's some different venues that we can go through that'll be really helpful in terms of recruitment, like the Association of Oregon Counties, League of Oregon Cities. Yep, exactly. Emma put it out in their newsletters with the outreach to that you all are working on to the Area Commission on Transportation, Ped Bike representatives, and local bike ped advisory committees. I think that's another great way to get it in front of local jurisdiction staff. So it's good timing. I think we've been getting good responses to the recruitments. So the two questions are, I guess, three questions. One, any comments on the recruitment announcement? Two, who would like to volunteer to be on the recruitment working group to review applications and make a recommendation to the governor's office? And three, is there any desire from the committee to provide feedback on the new application form? Because I think Hal and maybe Emma had pointed out that the new process is a lot more questions and a lot of clicking at potential barriers for a more diverse applicant base. So is there a desire to provide feedback to the boards and commissions office on how do we improve that application so it's more similar to our old one-page process?
I'd kind of like to see that happen because, you know, with me trying to get paid for being at these meetings, it has been a lot of weird paperwork that I have absolutely no idea where I'm at or where I stand or what has been turned in and what still needs to be done. I don't know. And I'm already on the committee. So for somebody coming in and wanting to be part of the committee, it would be overwhelming and dumb.
I do have a question, Jessica, regarding the application materials. Are all of those bullet items required? So responses to general application questions, you have to upload a resume, you have to upload a short personal bio, and then you have to responses to the board interest and background questions and responses to the subsequent, like gender identity, personal information, public records. I think those are probably just check boxes. But if somebody was interested and they looked at that and they're like, how long does this take? How long does this application process take? Is it 2 hours? Is it half an hour? To me, I would look at that and I would think like, that is a lot. No, thank you.
I went through the process in Workday, like created an
Oh yeah, and you have to create an account too.
Assuming that you have your letter of interest and your resume ready to go, it took about 15 minutes to apply. So it wasn't too bad. They are all materials that were required as part of the application before. It's just that before you could apply, you could send in your one-page application, get your name on the list, and we'd kind of follow up with you to make sure we got all the rest of the materials. And now it's kind of set up so you need all of those up front for your
So
application to be
are the
submitted.
responses to like the general application questions, are those checkbox responses or are they like paragraph narrative responses? Because to me, like if it's a narrative, I know that I cannot fill something out in 15 minutes for narrative. I have to think about my responses.
That is a good point. I
So-
didn't write a heartfelt narrative. I just put test,
Blah,
test,
blah,
test.
blah.
Yeah.
I can do that.
So I did not account for that. That would take longer. There's definitely, when we've done recruitments in the past, how much people put in those responses varies a lot. Some folks put a sentence or two, some folks write a short essay. But again, it is the same information that was being asked for before. It's just all up front in the application now. So some things we could do, we could put a little bit more in the recruitment about about calling me for support with the application process. That's about the only thing I can really think of, is providing more staff contact information to have folks to help walk people through Workday.
And Lauren, you're unmuted. Did you have something to offer?
But you kind of answered most of my questions. Another thought might be to include examples so that people aren't feeling like they need to write a whole long narrative. I like the idea of having somebody standing by to help with the application, or at least to answer some questions. And I would be willing to help with the review of those. That's something I could do.
Thanks, Lauren. And Bill, I'd love to hear your thoughts too, as our other member who's most recently gone through the application process.
It may seem recent. May seem recent to you, but Hey, I'm 75. I don't remember much about that, filling out the application process. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to be of much help on that.
Okay. Emma.
I'm just looking at the screenshots, and thank you, Jessica, for providing that in our materials for today. I'm wondering if the 2 questions that are fill in a text box that have, if you were selected to serve on this board or commission, what opportunities do you see for this board or commission to address equity? And what does diversity, equity, and inclusion mean to you? I'm wondering if those 2 questions could be pulled from the written application materials and could be asked during the work group interviews for people who we invite in to proceed.
I can ask about that because that is information that the governor's office wants, but I'll look into how much flexibility we have with it.
Okay, thank you. And thanks, Lauren, for being willing to work on this. It's a lot, and I would love to see it reduced, more streamlined.
So Jessica, one more question. I don't want to belabor this. Is there a way that we can add in parentheses, like text limit, like just to give folks like sort of a sense of what we're looking for? Like, we don't want an essay. We just want like perhaps a paragraph at the most, because again, like, how do we reduce the barriers?
Yeah. Aaron?
Yeah, I just wanted to give a little bit of feedback since I was kind of part of the recruitment work group last time. And yes, I think it's really helpful to like just give people a sense of how long it is, like those fill in the blank questions. Because I remember reading the applications last time and the responses varied from like 1 to 2 sentences to like multiple paragraphs. So maybe just putting like, hey, like max, 500 words or maybe less than that, just kind of giving them a sense of what we're looking for. And then kind of touching on Emma's point about kind of the diversity, equity, inclusion questions, it would be nice to maybe have like a short question in there about that, just because I remember that was something that we kind of looked at when we were kind of deciding who to interview from the applications that we got. But I think we should definitely have a more follow-up questions and more like in-depth conversation during the interviews about their responses or maybe other questions related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I would also be willing to help with the recruitment for this position as well.
Thank you, Aaron. All right, well, I will, in the meantime, I will make some tweaks to that recruitment announcement to provide some more clarity on the application and provide some more clear staff resources for application support. Get that out the door, and then we can continue to work on improving that application process. Thanks, everyone.
Great. So let's take a 5-minute break. We're just about 20 minutes behind. Let's take a 5-minute break and reconvene at 2:36. All right, 5 minutes goes fast. Goes by really fast.
Mhm. Emma might take a minute longer to get back. She just messaged me that a hawk just attacked a chicken in their coop.
Oh yeah, okay, I saw that too. That
Love
sounds
Oregon.
urgent. Oh no. All right, let me pull up the agenda.
So we've got work plan next. I can.
Okay, the year in
Do you-
review. You want to pull
Yeah.
that up?
Yep.
That's why I'm like, wait a second, this wasn't.
Yeah, they have very similar titles, and I did not even catch.
No, it's okay.
me.
Emma is very on top of things, so
Yeah.
I'm glad she caught it. Great. So I don't know if so Jessica, I feel like you should share the year in review because you pulled this wonderful document together, which oftentimes when you're sort of in the thick of doing things, you don't recognize. It's hard to recognize how much we have done and accomplished, especially given sort of the remote nature of our work and what that's been like for the past 2 years, I would say. So do you want to take 5 minutes to go through this document and
Sure.
talk through some of the things that we have accomplished as a committee?
I would be happy to do that because I think I've shared with you all that I'm a big believer in end of year reflection, and I think particularly as Hal mentioned with this remote meeting setting and remote work and COVID, we all have been feeling a little detached and rushed, and I think that's particularly valuable right now. And for those of you who have ended 2021 feeling a little tired, I think there is a good reason for that because this committee has been busy. I broke this up into your 4 different work program focus areas just to make sure that we're not missing any part of the work program, but you've been killing it on all 4 cylinders. So legislative policy last year through the 2021 session, even though we got clarity working with government affairs on kind of the procedure for OBPAC engaging in legislative issues and that being a little bit more restricted than perhaps it has been in the past. There still was a lot accomplished. Requesting governor support for Senate Bill 395, which was the bike bill update introduced by the Street Trust. Request was denied, but still an important thing. Lots of discussion with staff and the governor's office resulting from that engagement. Other bills passed around ODOT advisory committees, having membership that is required to reflect state demographics in terms of race and ability, and a large funding package for 82nd Avenue jurisdictional transfer. So big things happening in the legislature, and we're already looking forward to the next session with Kaz bringing legislative concept for next session to clean up our safe routes to school eligibility requirements so that they're broader and match the federal requirements. So legislative policy is going strong. ODOT policy adoption and implementation. One of the goals from the last work plan update was to really work through that power map that Maria led you all through developing when we had our workshop in Astoria and get in front of leadership. And I think that this has been a great year for doing that in terms of one-on-ones with Director Strickler, Assistant Director Cooper Brown, our new DMV and Safety Office Administrator Amy Joyce, and just the level of engagement with Karen, our Public Transportation Division Administrator, since the reorg has been really great. getting in front of other groups with letters regularly to Oregon Transportation Commission, both making needs clear and, thanking folks for their engagement and for the positive changes that we're seeing. Lots of engagement with the Mobility Advisory Committee and change on that front in terms of working on the charter working group with Emma and Lake, getting both a pedestrian and a bicycle representative appointed to that group and having kind of a regular engagement process. The Transportation Safety Action Plan that Hal and Michael led letters and public testimony on, and how Mavis and staff on various committees for the Oregon Transportation Plan update. That's the next big thing being developed. So lots going on in the ODOT policy front. Funding 2021 was just a huge year for funding in terms of expanding what we have available for public and active transportation. So we started out the beginning of the year with that $255 million for public and active transportation in the 24-27 STIP. And the committee has continued to stay engaged in helping us stand up those new programs and figure out how we're going to identify projects and allocate those funds. So that was the first month of 2021, $255 million. Boom. March, you allocated $15.2 million to 21 path projects for the very first cycle of Oregon Community Paths, which I think was just a huge milestone from a year plus of work standing up that program just from scratch with Alan. And it's been really successful. Let's see, July, September, 6.2 million for 7 SWIP strategic projects that with a prioritization for safety and equity across the state. April, $10 million from OTC for emergency pedestrian safety improvements that are on like a new data-driven top priority pedestrian safety corridor list. Emma working on the new EASY equitable active safety implementation evaluation project. So yeah, just been huge for funding, and that is going to continue to be a big part of this group's work, just informing how do we allocate those funds and how do we stay transparent and accountable as an agency and make sure that we have the biggest impact possible with those funds. Then on organizational health, 2 new member recruitments. That's a pretty big lift for an 8-person committee. So while it's sad to say goodbye to 3 people, I think we sent them off properly given remote work, and really excited to invite Lauren and Bill to the committee. Updated bylaws, figuring out the membership terms so that everybody is staggered to help with the long-term stability of the committee, so we don't have times where it's just a whole new or 50% new committee all at the same time. Finally, got Mavis to do all the paperwork. Figured out the stipends issue. So this has even evolved since I wrote this. It's now $30 an hour stipends through the equitable engagement compensation policy, or $150 per diems through the new House Bill 2992 that passed during the legislative session. So that's really going to help us with recruitment and retainment, and just, compensating people for their really, really valuable commitments to this group going forward. And that workshop with the Area Commission on Transportation, active transportation representatives, seems like so long ago now, but that was less than a year ago and was a pretty big, exciting thing that I'm starting to get emails from folks of, when are we doing that again? because people are really excited to build that network and be having these kinds of conversations that you all are facilitating. So congratulations, good work. 2021, you ruled it. So I think the big question now is where are we going next? How do we update the work plan and try to build on these existing accomplishments and bring them into kind of logical next steps and take advantage of that momentum while not burning ourselves out, and still remembering that this is a volunteer, passionate but busy group of people that have other things going on and very full lives. So that's all I've got.
Yeah, thanks, Jessica, for the recap. I'm sure it took a lot of work to pull that one pager together and all those bullet points. And it is really helpful to sort of reflect back on where we've been to help us figure out where we want to go next, and what we want to do over the next 2 years. I think there's a lot that still needs to be done, especially, you know, with more funding opportunities now at the IIJ. Our work is not done. We need to continue to advocate for the funding that we actually need, the state needs, in order to complete the BITE network. So going back to the work plan, when Jessica and I met, actually looking at that document and thinking about where we've been, and I really appreciate the way you broke out the accomplishments under our focus areas, so we can take a look back and see what we've done, and then figure out what that looks like in this work plan. Bill and I met this morning just to touch base briefly because we were both assigned the first focus area under legislative policy. And I think Bill, given his experience working with the former Congressman Oberstar, I think can actually take this first focus area and update and revise it pretty well. So Bill and I are assigned to the first focused area. And one of the things that, you know, in looking at the work plan that we could do is remove all of the dates. I know that when Maria walked us through the exercise of power mapping and looking at the goals, we were trying to make what are those goals called again?
Smart goals.
Smart goals.
Measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely.
Right. So smart goals. And so I think what we have here are they are smart goals, and they're very, very specific. But I think in order to make it more manageable, perhaps removing some of those dates, but maybe others feel differently as a starting point. So
I was looking through it. I'd suggest the goal be specific enough so that we know whether we've accomplished it or not, or we have like some way of knowing when to take it off our work plan.
yeah,
but maybe the tactics and timeline is where we could get more specific about dates and not have it under the goal itself.
that is a great suggestion. I like that idea. Yeah, so maybe let's start with what do folks think? Do these focus areas still work for our committee? Or is there something missing?
I'm looking at everyone else because Hao and I played a large part in creating this. So clearly we have our own thoughts since we put them in the document. Lauren?
I just, I haven't been part of this long enough to know the answer to that question, but I didn't want to just stay silent. So I think you have some very worthy goals here that you can keep working through. or the focus areas. You were talking about the focus areas, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, legislative, what were you saying? That was advocacy is always, that's ongoing, always ongoing. Yeah, I think all of these are still there. The goals underneath of each one of them can change, or just the work can change. But I think all of these focus points are essential to the work that we do. So I think you guys did a good job on that.
Aaron?
Yeah, I don't know if it would fall into one of our current focus areas, but I know something that we always kind of bring up is, of course, kind of like social equity. So I don't know if that could be a potential focus area for the future, just making sure that that's always kind of something that we're always considering, something that we're always pushing for. I don't know if it warrants its own focus area, but definitely like it'd be part of kind of our goals moving forward.
It's funny you say that, Aaron, because that's actually under number 4, which you and I are assigned to. So we can work on that. It's part of the goal under that focus area 4.
Yeah, I'm trying to think back to, was it Astoria? And we struggled with this topic, not because of like calling it out as a focus area, but whether this is sort of an overarching lens that we need to weave into everything we do. And so at the time, it felt right to call it out as a separate thing. But perhaps we have evolved enough to make sure to, so here's a thought is, as we are refreshing this work plan, perhaps one of the things that each of the committee members can do is, when you're working on your focus area, can you weave social equity into either goal strategy or somewhere in your area? So, I mean, that is one thought on how we can address that and make sure that it is something that is constantly being worked on. So, and then Emma, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I would agree with what you're sharing, Hal. In reviewing this for the meeting today, focus area 4, tactic A says review the OBPAC work program and with the Government Alliance on Racial Equity, the GARE questions, and refine to better address equity. So I think that would be a great next step to take with this work plan update, to look at the whole document and all of the work that we're doing as a committee and better align it with social equity kind of throughout. And there's that tool to help us do that. We just haven't got into doing that piece yet.
Mavis.
When I look at it, I'm missing Cadell. So Cadell was all about, since we have new members, you guys don't know Cadell, but he was our under 21er. And he was all about the autonomous vehicle and all these really cool futuristic things that are coming down the pike. But I personally am not involved in, and as Jessica can attune, I am not tech savvy and I hate it. But that doesn't mean it's not coming. And when I look at what we've got going on here, I really think that we're missing the boat in that arena. And I don't know where it belongs and whatever, but it is missing.
I think it could be called out under the policy piece.
We do have under focus area 1, item strategy 7 is support autonomous vehicle regulations that incorporate safety of all people walking, biking, regardless of skin color and ability, etc. So it's incorporated there, but I think we have yet to really assign a lead person on that topic, and I too have been missing to know on that kind of like more general topic. So we could either revise that or focus on adding someone to specifically start engaging on that topic and figuring out what's currently active, what's coming our way, what can we lead on.
Emma, what location did you say? that
Focus
was?
area 1, strategy 7. At the bottom of that first page.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Jessica, who at ODA is sort of leading the policy work that's related to autonomous vehicles?
That is a really good question. Is Susan?
I know that at some point you had someone and then it's switched over so many times, I haven't been able to track that.
So we have the Office of Innovation, and then the Climate Office has some pieces, and then we have a ITS, Intelligent Transportation Systems unit. So I think kind of between those three. Is that right, Susan?
That's the answer I was going to give. Also, we can try to find out how and get back to you also.
Yeah, it'd be good to know because at some point it might be, and like I'm jumping ahead. I'm actually working on revising and updating, but it would be good to invite that person to our committee meeting. So then we can re-engage on that topic once we find somebody on our committee who would like to volunteer. So I don't know if that's of interest for the committee or, you know, that person can engage, you know, connect offline and then bring information back to our committee, but either one of those options might be useful.
Yeah, I think Galen McGill is the one person name that I can think of who's kind of our point for all things technology at ODOT that we could definitely add to an agenda build. And I believe there is a working group related to the Oregon Transportation Plan, so I can look into that as well.
I don't know who raised their hand first. So Mavis or Aaron? Mavis, you go first. You're unmuted, and then Aaron.
All right. I was just, revisiting this. Is there anybody on this committee right now that is like super into that? Or is that one of the things that when we are looking for our recruitment that possibly we should be looking forward? Because Cadell loved it. He loved it and breathed it, and it was his thing. And I think it is important to have that on our committee. So that's my opinion. That's my question, Aaron.
To answer your question, Mavis, yes, I was about to kind of bring up the fact that I have been like learning more about it just because I'm finally taking my highway engineering classes, actually getting to civil engineering classes, not just my math and physics. So yeah, I'd be more than interested to kind of delve deeper into these topics because that's the topics that we're kind of having discussions about in class in our discussion boards, how do autonomous vehicles kind of go into, our current infrastructure system? How do we, adapt with smart cities that are, kind of coming? How do we adjust our technology to kind of be able to combine our existing system with all the new technologies that are coming out?
We could have our travel meeting this July in Corvallis and have the autonomous delivery drones bring us burritos for lunch.
No, I want to go on a walk.
I second that, Mavis. Go ahead, Emma.
Kind of on the same topic, how I know we were talking outside of a meeting about expanding membership. And so I think that would serve our committee in a number of ways that would strengthen our work program and could have people who are passionate about all the different issues that relate to walking and biking are really important represented on our committee. I am still not 100% clear on like what the next steps of that are. We talked about maybe a 2023 legislative concept. I could see it be legislative. I could see it be organizational health, but I think it'd be good to update our work program to reflect the desire to increase the committee and also have a discussion with this group as to what we think we would love as our ideal membership. Is it, 10 to 12 members, 12 to 16? what types of perspectives, what membership do we want to specify versus keep broad and open. But it's been a common theme of let's revisit that and kind of modernize our committee to reflect Oregon and the work that needs to be done.
So I think it shows up in two places. I think we could possibly add it as a legislative agenda item, like to update the overarching statute that governs our board or our committee. But at the same time, pursue adding subcommittees. I think one of the complexities that Karen has brought up with adding subcommittee members is, do we also compensate them the same way that committee members are compensated or should be compensated? Because again, like, you know, if equity is a thing, we don't want people to volunteer and not pay them to do the work, because it is going to be work overall. So is there a way to pursue both options? Because it is a heavy lift. I'm feeling, I don't know if you all feel the heavy lift of having an 8 member committee and having 2 people gone for a meeting, or, you know, so I feel like we could do more if we had more members and pull in other disciplines like health. We've talked about public health as a key stakeholder in the work that we want to push forward. So I think it would also broaden the lens and the way we approach the work that we do too. Robert is back, but he has a 2-year-old, and all I'm saying is all parents of toddlers are struggling these days with COVID, childcare, and everything else. I have a team member that has a 2.5-year-old, and it's something every week. Whether it's childcare falling through or a sick child or they're sick. So he's just trying to, I think he's just trying to make it work right now. So, but I did talk to him and he said that he knows that he's been absent and he is trying. He's not quite ready to give up on us. So he would like to still serve if we're happy to have him continue serving. So
one thing I mentioned to him is maybe we could identify somebody else on the Recreational Trails Advisory Committee who could kind of serve as an alternate for if he's not available or has a childcare issue.
And Jessica, you may have to help us through sort of that compensation bit. I don't know if we have a budget, but maybe with the lack of travel over the last 2 years, perhaps, you know, that would be an opportunity to bring on some additional subcommittee members to help us move forward some of this work. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think
that's a concept.
We can definitely figure out the stipend organization for that. I think the bigger thing is now that all of the governor appointed committees have moved over to Workday. If we add folks other than the 8 main statutorily required members, we'd have to have a different management system for everything with any additional members. So there'll be some administrative hoops to go through there, but we can figure it out if that's.
Do you know of other committees that have subcommittees that have subcommittee members that are outside of the core membership group?
I'm not aware of any that are governor appointed, but I don't know that I have specifically gone asking and looking for examples. So let me add that to the follow-up items list. Because I think we did have the inquire about increasing the size of the committee in the previous work plan. And we went down the road of, do we really need to change the statute? And that was the confirmation we got back from the governor's office in terms of having more than 8 members who have full voting privileges and that sort of thing.
And I think Marcia in the chat, you said PTAC. Can you share more about that real quick?
Sure. PTAC, so Public Transportation Advisory Committee, frequently uses non-committee members on work groups. They have what you call subcommittee PTAC in their purpose and structure or charter document specify work groups for various topics or tasks or initiatives. But again, PTAC governor appointed its commission. It's a commission chartered committee.
Okay,
And
thanks.
I'll put the link to their work group there, but in fact, they are currently refreshing the committee purpose, structure, membership, all of the above, and they have several non-committee members on that work group to take a look at the structure and charter for the PTAC.
Okay, great, thanks. So I haven't heard from Bill. Do you have any overall thoughts?
I think the thing that comes most to mind is developing relationships. I'll need your help. Especially need your help in selecting a handful of, or maybe two hands full of Oregon legislators in both bodies that I should develop personal relationships with, so that we're not just coming to them at the last minute. Will you support this? Is it a good deal? Is it not a good deal? But that it's someone that they've worked with, someone that they know, and have at least the very beginning, the early start of a relationship with. So maybe you and I can get together offline, and you can help me to identify those key 6, 8, 10, or 12 lawmakers that I will reach out to and try to establish a connection with.
And I think that sounds great. That education piece, a year or two in advance of the next legislative session, I think is really important. So I'd love to see that integrated into the work plan somehow.
Let's do it.
Okay, all right. Very exciting. Any other thoughts on the work plan review? I'm hoping that, any questions about the focus areas and who is assigned to what? Anybody unhappy with that assignment want to be reassigned, or does it look okay to folks? So, and just real quick, legislative policy is Bill and myself, and then Mavis and I will work on the ODOT policy adoption and implementation. Emma and Robert will be working on the expand funding policy and programs, and Lauren and Aaron are assigned to the organizational health and communications. So that has been pulled out of, I believe, one of the other policy areas into the organizational health.
I'm not sure if this was covered before I came back from break. I'm curious to hear from committee members just kind of where we're at and how we're feeling in relation to OBPAC, if we have more hours to give, but we feel like, for instance, Lauren, I heard your statement earlier about not feeling like you've kind of been around the committee to witness things long enough to know how to jump right in and give comment on some things. So are there things that we should do in the organizational health area to get to know each other and support each other, the committee more? I'm just curious to hear kind of where are we all at as committee members and what would be supportive to do in the next year or two to be a more effective committee. And if that's just saying, hey, life is crazy right now because of the context we're living in. That's helpful context to be aware of. Or if you're like, yeah, I really want to do more, but I need direction and I don't know how to do more, that would also be helpful feedback. You could have like a quick popcorn of a quick check-in and like, where are you at? A couple sentences.
I think for me, it's usually just kind of cycling through the season to see how things work and the effect that they have. And yes, it's a crazy time. So it's much more difficult to meet in this kind of a context and for me to get a lot of things done. I think breaking down tasks and projects into smaller bites, and I hate to say it, but meeting more often. But I don't want to say that, so I'm just saying that would create more exposure. That's all.
So I miss having a drink with Mavis the night before an OBPAC meeting, and I realized that I am missing those personal interactions and connections a lot. So, so I think like on my New Year's resolution is if I'm in one of your areas, I'm going to make it a point to try to connect with you in person. So I think that's a goal of mine for this year is how can I connect with all of you individually?
I'm ready to go to Astoria. So those of you new to the committee, we went to Astoria a couple of times, and that's where we would have this conversation and we would spend some good time together and figure out just where we want to go as a committee. And it would really rev us up for the next little bit. And I feel like we are missing that because I think we're kind of flagging in areas just because we haven't had that chance. And that is not pointing blame at anybody because it is not something that has been able to happen. But going forward, yeah, those in person where we get together before and after and talk about nothing but, you know, how good the wine tastes and how beautiful our children are. That is definitely a need to do thing. Just because it develops the relationship so that we feel comfortable coming to each other and saying, hey, that thing that we're talking about, yeah, we need to like either stop that or move on ahead with it. And it doesn't take our valuable meeting time. So I'm feeling like I'm doing a lot of ODOT stuff and I'm looking at another couple freight trains coming my way. So I'm trying not to actually volunteer for anything right now. So Bill, Lauren, you guys are it. So welcome aboard. I really look forward to seeing you in person.
So right now in the agenda build for 2022, it seemed like May was where we were looking at possibly getting back to some sort of potentially in-person meetings, but that was pretty busy for folks. So I've got us penciled in for July for maybe a travel meeting. Do folks have thoughts acknowledging that there is no longer a government rate hotel, as far as I'm aware, in Astoria, Mavis? Do folks have thoughts on where they would like to go for a travel meeting? If there's particular projects or facilities that you'd like to tour for doing that half-day business trip, half-day talent?
Let's go visit
There's
Michael.
a lot going on.
Well,
does Michael have a lot to show us?
Because it got burned, right? And they're rebuilding it and they're throwing tons of money at it. I'm hearing great things, but I have not seen it. I don't know. That's why I threw that out there. What do you think, Aaron?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be really great to see. I don't know exactly how far along the project is as far as kind of the 99 improvements. But yeah, I mean, I would always love to go down there. And yeah, I haven't shared yet, but my family has finished the rebuilding process. So we are back in our home. We moved in November. So
That's awesome. Yeah, we could definitely, I'll look into Jenna Marmon's our active transportation liaison down there, and yeah, I'm sure we could try to organize something. So I'm gonna do a quick time check. We are about 20 minutes behind.
So Jessica, do you want to cover which item do you think is more important? The performance measures? I think we can do the agenda build offline. What do you think?
Yep, the agenda build is on the drive. So I've started fleshing it out just based on recurring items. So yeah, folks can feel free to go in there and add things. There is at the bottom of the page kind of a list of agenda requests that I haven't quite been able to figure out how to work them into the work plan or the flow of things. So yeah, both the work plan and the agenda build are both living documents in the Google Drive. So feel free to go in, put comments, make edits, and we'll keep on working on them. But I think March is already going to be a pretty full meeting. So. And then in terms of our, well, I guess how for next steps for wrapping up work plan updates.
So go ahead. No, you had a proposal. Why don't you share?
Mostly, do folks want to keep on working on them, and I'll put some time on the agenda in March to put a bow on it, and folks can coordinate with their partner and their focus area between now and then. And I'll just try to schedule some time to touch base with folks if there's questions or things like that.
That sounds good. Could you reshare the GARE questions that were shared with us?
Yes.
I think following Astoria, because I think that for that item that's in organizational health, it really applies to the whole work program. So if each of us who's kind of leading and looking at a section, if we can look through that section with those questions, that would be a way that we can check something off the list and embed equity throughout the document more.
Yep, I can do that. And then I'd also just put in a plug, especially for Bill and Lauren, well, for everybody, if there are training or educational needs, desires of maybe it's time for us to do another equity training as a group, or there's some topic that's been coming up at meetings that you'd really like to have some training on that particular item, let me know, put it in the work plan. We do have some budget to try to bring in trainers for other folks. So just need to kind of know what the specific needs are in this environment. And I'm just noticing that Will, who is our 325 presenter, just started a Teams meeting. So I'm gonna direct him to the right Zoom link real quick. And then I think maybe we might want to jump to the HDM topic.
So should we just take a quick break so you can get him on, and then when he joins, then we can address that agenda item and then performance measures after that, if that works for you. Okay. All right, let's take a 4-minute break. So come back at 3:24.
Hey, Will, the group's taken a super quick break and we'll be back in just a couple minutes. Will, do you want to unmute for a second just so I can make sure you're, oh, you're not able to unmute. Oh. Troubleshooting. All right, why don't you try unmuting again, Will? Still not working. That. Is very bizarre because I have you as co-host. You should be able to unmute. Let me give you, okay.
We're back, and I see, thought I saw Will.
Yep, just working through, was not able to unmute before.
Oh, I think I got it.
Okay,
Success.
awesome.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Will. Let me share my screen real quick with your presentation, and I can just advance slides for you if that's easiest, so you can see everybody on the committee. Just as way of introduction, Will is our senior design standards engineer. Is that the correct current title? Or you have a fancier one now?
No, senior
Or is it
engineer.
how?
What was that?
Was Mavis trying to ask a question?
I think she's having a little bit of network slowness. She's asking who is frozen.
Oh, understood.
Are you still with us, Mavis?
Mavis, you're frozen.
Ah, the joys of remote meetings. All right, I'm assuming that she just lost her connection and we'll jump back on. So I think we can.
Press on.
Yeah, are you back with us, Mavis? All right, well, I'll work with her on that in the chat maybe, but we can get going with your item. So Will is here to talk about the highway design manual update. This is a very early involvement, but on a activity with a quick timeline. So he'll give kind of an overview and then we'll have time for questions and discussion, and definitely discussion of, kind of process timeline for future engagement. So I'll let you take it away. Well,
Perfect. Thank you, Jessica. Well, I want to start by saying thank you for having me. I think a lot of times our interaction with the Highway Design Manual in our group are consultants or designers calling and saying, do I really have to follow that standard? So I'm always happy to encounter a group who's excited about what we're doing and willing to participate. So thank you all for having me, and I appreciate your interest in what we're doing. So my presentation is going to be a little bit about kind of the update we're going through, and quickly talk about what changed in the manual, but I'll try to get to the parts that I think you'll be most interested in, try to leave some time at the end for some questions and some discussion. So next slide, please. So our current version, as most of you probably know, is the 2012 version of the Highway Design Manual, with a few updates along the line, but it's well overdue for an update. So we determined this was a good time for kind of a restructuring of the whole document. We'd gotten feedback over the years that usability wasn't the best, and so and the old manual was based off kind of an AASHTO manual structure, and we've decided to go with a little bit different structure that we hope is easier for our users. The new Highway Design Manual is going to include quite a bit of guidance that has been published between the last Highway Design Manual and now. So that includes our tech bulletins. A big one is including the Blueprint for Urban Design, or the BUD, as it's more commonly known. And then the chapters, or the areas where probably the most changes that happened is the pedestrian and the bicycle chapters, with all the work that's been going on with curb ramps and pedestrian design guidance, as well as Roger and our group working on expanded bicycle guidance. So really putting a lot of effort into those two parts. Next, please. So this just quickly shows you the new structure of the document. If you're familiar with the old structure, it'll look a little bit different. We went from 16 chapters to 13 parts. So in all, we consolidated into fewer parts. However, you'll notice that what was chapter 13 for pedestrians and bicycles has now been expanded into two separate parts. 800 is pedestrian design and 900 is bicycle design. And so those two in particular grew quite a bit in volume, and there's a lot of new information in there, as well as including the information that has been published, but wasn't included in the HDM. And then all in all, on the structure, when you do get a chance to look at it, hopefully you'll notice that we went from more of a discipline focused to more of a use focus. And so we would separate 3R, 4R, 1R type projects before, and now we're looking at more of the highway that you're looking at, and hopefully getting more of the information in one place, and the users will have to flip back and forth between chapters less. And then what I don't have listed here are the appendices.
For Will, the 1R, 3R, 4R classification.
Oh. Yes, yeah. So 3R is our reconstruction projects. 4R is new construction projects, and then 1R, I think the easiest way for me to think of it is kind of your grind and inlay, is you're just resurfacing the highway. And so they're sort of the complexity of the projects that we're doing. And then the appendices aren't listed here, but they'll largely stay as they are now. However, in quite a few instances, we're trying to pull information out of the appendices and into the text itself, because we think it's easier for people not have to, flip back and forth to the appendice and try to write the information next to the figure or whatever it was that was in the appendix. but for the most part, they're staying as they are. Next slide, please.
And I think for this group, the big thing in the appendix is one of them is the Oregon Bicycle and Pedestrian Design Guide. So in terms of ped bike facility design, the part 800, 900 that Will's talking about that are in the highway design manual, that's our design guidance for ODOT highways, state facilities. And then that appendix is more guidance for local folks. And we use that for grants through Safe Routes to School, community paths, things like that. So we're going to be updating that as well. It's just going to be after we get this main update done.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. So Appendix L will look, which is the ped bike design guide, will look as it looks in its current version, but updates come in once our resources are freed a little bit from getting through the HDM update. And this is just, I just wanted to show the group what part 800 and part 900 included. I guess I'd say feel free to ask questions, but this is just kind of a look at what we've included in those parts. And then I'll show 900. Yeah, here, some high points, 910 or the 910s. There's multiple sections in that range, but it talks about bike bill implementation, as well as in the 940s, we talk about bikeway selection process, which is from the BUD, and then also kind of a new information in regards to parallel routes. And then in the 950s, we introduce the protected intersections. So hopefully a lot of expanded information. The 900 being a new part and a lot of the language being new, I think there are pieces that Roger Gutierrez, who is the author of this part, he would have liked to get more in the manual. It's just resourcing restrictions, I suppose. He wasn't able to cover every piece of it. And I think there's a bit of an effort to introduce the information at a pace that we know the product will be quality. And so something I want to know, and I'll talk about it later too, is that we're moving from whatever our update schedule was up to this point, which is few and far between on the updates, to a yearly update schedule. And so our thought is that we'll more easily be able to update these pieces, add additional information as it's ready, and the manual will be much more up to date as we move along. Next slide, please. Just kind of a brief discussion of how the users will be affected with the new manual. Obviously, the content is in a different location. Some of the pieces were kind of pulled apart and put back together. Same Legos, but we ended up with a different set at the end, I suppose. Other than bike and ped, though, for any of the other information in the manual, it was largely just a restructuring. So a lot of the design standards haven't changed. The language was updated a little bit. The structure has changed. The standards remain the same. Bike and ped, as you all know, has changed significantly since 2012. So I'd say those were the two parts that are the exception. And then the big one, the incorporation of the blueprint for urban design also. So here's our update schedule. We completed the draft in December. It's currently out for internal ODOT review. And so that actually closes this Friday. We're going to take the comments that we received, clean up the draft, make the changes that were identified during this internal review. And then we're going to go out for an external stakeholder review starting February 28th. So a month from this Friday. And then the hope is to finalize and publish by spring of 2022. And then, like I said before, we'll move into a yearly update schedule. I do want to put a plug out though, if anybody on this committee wants to be a part of the review process, or you know of anybody who might be interested in it, please contact me. We're always looking for interested parties to look over the document and provide comments to us. And so I very much appreciate any interest. I suppose you could get a hold of Jessica, or you could email me directly. My information, I think, is at the beginning and the end of the slide deck.
And I'll just note that for the external review timeline, that is going to wrap up before the next OBPAC meeting. So this is another one where you could either sign up as individuals to be involved in the stakeholder review, or if the committee wanted to develop a working group to get together to focus on this. There's folks who really want to nerd out on design elements. That would probably be appropriate given the timeline.
Question?
Yeah, I have a question. So you say, so you had mentioned that the design standards haven't changed really, but it's more of a restructuring. One of, I think, my concerns with the highway design manual is defining shoulders. I think for people who bike, that is very problematic because historically ODOT has, I think the use of shoulders in rural areas as bicycle facilities, I think is sufficient, but it does not work on freeways. I think right now what we're seeing is because there is a limited space, the shoulders, I think there is currently a demonstration to use the shoulders to run buses, right? That's supposed to be for people who bike, and it's supposed to be for cars that break down. And so I think like fundamentally the way shoulders are sort of treated in the highway design manual is in conflict with safety for people who bike and walk. So I don't know how that's going to be addressed in the future.
Yeah, so that's an excellent comment. One focus is we kind of restructured the topics into what we hope is a better organization was to clean up defined terms. And so we have defined terms over the whole manual, and then each part we tried to make an effort, or each author tried to make an effort to really define what those terms mean in terms, or in the context of that part. I think your comment is really good though, because it's not, it's something that needs to work throughout all of design. Every aspect of design needs to be aware of what a shoulder is and the intended purposes of it, and not just focus on the discipline or the aspect of that design. So that's a really good comment. I've written it down here. Those are exactly the sorts of comments we're hoping for during the review period also. So if any of you are able to review the document and you come across anything like that, those are really constructive, helpful comments for us.
And then my other question is, does your office also deal with design exceptions?
Yeah, so we, Tandra Mortensen is in our office, and she's the senior ADA standards engineer. So she'll handle all of the curb ramp design exceptions. And then our office takes all of the general design exceptions also. So they'll all come through me or one of my colleagues.
Yeah, one of the issues that we have grappled with as a committee is looking at design exceptions for the bike bill, because the bike bill is supposed to sort of ensure that all reconstruction projects well, I don't know if it's adequately, because they don't adequately accommodate people who bike and walk. And so we were going through that process, and what we found out was very few projects actually go through that design exception process because there's so many ways for ODOT to justify not including bicycle and pedestrian accommodations. So I think that's something that we have looked at in the past, and you know, because there are competing interests and issues, it kind of just fell by the wayside. And so just having you here just to help understand how that works, I think is helpful. So
are you saying that through the design exception process, exceptions were approved that maybe didn't honor the spirit of the bill? Is that?
I think it's more of, in going through that process, projects can justify excluding bicycle and pedestrian projects for a variety of reasons. And so the design, even though, so maybe I'll turn the question around. Does your, like, how many design exceptions do you receive in a year to not include biking and walking facilities?
Oh, honestly, I couldn't answer that. I guess two things. I'm a bit new to the office, so I've been here a year and a half. Dave Pauley was the senior standards engineer for many years before me. And I don't necessarily see them personally, but it's an excellent question. And it is something I've heard Roger Gutierrez speak about also, you know, bringing awareness of the bike bill to everything we do, really. I know there's a much bigger discussion about it in the highway design manual now. And I know that he's incredibly passionate about, you know, making sure bicycles are considered and the facilities for bicycles are considered in everything we do. And so I couldn't necessarily answer without a pretty wild guess at how many design exceptions we see dealing with that.
I may follow up with you separately and
Sure.
Roger too. So
Yeah,
I'm curious. So
yeah.
all right. Thank you. I didn't mean to take up all the time, Jessica.
No.
There might be other folks.
I think I brought it back to the Part 900 slide that Will had shared, because I think two places to really highlight for the committee that are a lot of what's changing in the pedestrian and bicycle guidance and the highway design manual in general will not be completely new for this group, because you all reviewed the blueprint for urban design guidance early on, and that is all like pretty much being copied and pasted into the appropriate places throughout the manual. But in the pedestrian and bicycle sections, the new pieces that I think the committee that are really directly related to the committee's work plan are this bike bill implementation of taking that guidance that was in that standalone document we've got on our website and the interpretation flowchart and making that part of the highway design manual, and which will be helpful because, like Will said, just trying to make it the one-stop shop where people can find everything as they're designing a project. But there's also some discussion there and some policy piece that we'll need to work out on what does that design exception, what does the public involvement piece of claiming a bike bill exemption involve? Do we want to provide some more clarity around that? And one of the examples that's in the write-up right now is, so a parallel is with historic bridges. If we want to get an exemption to our historic preservation requirements, we have SHPO. Oh man, I need to remember an acronym. That State Historic Preservation Office needs to write a letter saying they've been engaged in this process. So do we have something similar with the bike bill of, if we're writing an exemption, we get a letter from a local bike ped advisory committee or from OBPAC saying they've been made aware of, been engaged in that discussion. And so that's something that it's kind of a question of, what does this committee think about that? It's a big policy change. So is that something that we would want to keep really flexible? Is it something that, like Will said, we're going to do annual updates for the highway design manual going forward? So do we want to put a placeholder for this spring deadline of this is something we need a little bit more time to work on and spend the next year working with the committee to really make sure we refine it and get it right? So bike bill implementation is one that I definitely wanted to flag of. I think the committee will want to review it when the draft is out for review. The other one is that parallel routes topic, and that is so maybe we can't fit something here, or maybe it is a freeway where that parallel route is really more appropriate and what we want rather than the shoulder. So making sure we get that, where it's kind of a junction of design guidance, but also a bit of a policy and planning piece that I think the committee will be interested in. Sorry, Emma?
Another question?
Emma?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Will. This has been on our work plan, and Hal spoke to the shoulder issue that's specifically a part of our committee's work plan because it's been an issue for a while. And we did work with our input on the blueprint for urban design. I'm hoping that figure 3-6, the bike facility selection process in the BUD, will help with a number of these issues. I can't remember off the top of my head what the legislation was that passed recently and when the report on the effectiveness of the BUD implementation will be available, but maybe that report could inform how far we need to go with that bike bill implementation piece in the highway design manual that Jessica was just asking about. Because if we're finding out, yeah, we've done the work, here's the blueprint, it's been operating and things are great, which I doubt that's what the findings are going to be, then maybe not a ton of additional work would need to be done in that section. But if we're finding out how it is or isn't being applied and what the barriers are, then that could inform how we would want to approach our recommendation on how to update that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, one other piece that's possibly related. When we rewrote some of the parts, we borrowed a formatting structure from some of the other ODOT manuals where we more clearly define what is standard versus what is an option for designer versus what is just general text or commentary. So we do that by, bolding text and then using italics or a different font in the language. I can't remember, only some of the parts have received that change or that shift so far. I believe 900 is one of them. And so hopefully that's a way that we can more clearly state to designers what is in fact standard, because when you have a 1100 or 1200 page document, it's sometimes hard to, you get the people who are just skimming the page, and by bolding or italicizing or both that text that they really do need to look at, and by not following that, they're in fact deviating from standard. We hope we can put some of these issues out there a little bit more and help everybody to, 1341. It's a few pages. So that's another change that's coming also.
Thank you. So given that it's coming out in September, I think we'd want to look at that report and maybe include it in our agenda build for later this fall, and then provide some recommendations for next year's update based on what that report is sharing. In the meantime, I think this is a really important item. I think Erin's on this item for the work plan and supportive of diving in for a review. I'd like to ask whether we want to do like a side work group that would have a meeting, or if we're just saying, Erin, please do a deep dive and bring us your feedback, share it with the committee. For those of us who might be able to review, if we can have the document shared, and if we have time, we can provide input, that would be good. Jessica, you said that this would be happening before our next meeting, but I thought we were meeting early March, and the external review looks like it's through March 18th. Can you just clarify what our opportunity for input consists of, please?
Yeah, I thought that, okay, now I gotta pull up the calendar. I thought that your next meeting was March. Oh, shoot. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for a second.
Looks like it's March 22nd.
Yep. So next meeting's March 22nd. The timeline. So it's 4 days after the the review deadline for the HDM, draft of the HDM.
Well, I would love to have the opportunity to review for those of us who might have time, and just thank you, Erin, for doing a deeper dive.
I need to stop volunteering for things, but I would also like to review this. Did I just say that? Not the whole 1,300 pages, just sections.
So I feel like there's a couple different routes we could go in terms of distributing it for review to members of OBPAC. Of either we could give individual names to Will to add to his group email, or I could just forward what Will sends out to the group and kind of highlight, here's the sections that the committee might be most interested in.
I'd prefer option 2. I don't think it hurts that we all get it.
Because then that gives an opportunity to kind of consolidate and prioritize comments a little bit then as well. Since I have the feeling will receive a few.
We will provide a comment log too, and so if I don't know if that would be helpful to this group, that you could compare comments on a single comment log and prioritize them as you see fit, or we don't mind if we get comment logs from every individual reviewer. Also, we're just happy to have people who are interested in our work and willing to volunteer and help us make it better. So thank you all.
And Erin, I feel like if you're taking your traffic engineering course this semester, that if you have a capstone semester project for that, you've got it covered with reviewing this.
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to take a look at it. My only question would be, so are we taking the route on each one of us submitting our own individual comments, or would you want me to kind of gather the comments from the committee and kind of submit just all of our comments on behalf of OBPAC?
How about we put the comment log's pretty much an Excel spreadsheet, so we could put it on the drive, and you will be the primary owner of that, but other folks have access to it to add things if it comes up.
Okay, that works.
And then you don't have to be in charge of putting everybody's thoughts into the particular format, because that can take a good amount of time.
Okay, that works then.
All right. Well, I am sure that we'll have some follow-up items for the March agenda on this topic.
And thank you, Will. It was really helpful and informative.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And please feel free, whether it be, through the review period or just anything else that I talked about, please feel free to reach out to me, shoot me an email directly. I'd be happy to, give you the answer or try to find someone who's smarter than me that has the answer.
Great. Jessica, we blew up the agenda again. I'm so sorry. I'm not sure what happened.
That's all right. I can do the key performance measure update in 5 minutes or less, if that's
Yeah, I think it would be good to try to end like around 4ish, and then we did not leave any time for not on agenda items. And I know that that was something that Michael felt really strongly about. And anyway, so why don't you do the key performance measures and then we'll end the meeting and let everybody go.
Can do. All right, so this is something that came to the committee about a year ago, and this is mostly an inform item before it goes to OTC. We had a contract with Kittleson and Associates to do some planning on 2 of our 3 key initiatives from the Ped Bike Plan. One is defining the network that was basically developing the active transportation needs inventory and updating design guidance, which clearly we have been working hard on that initiative. The other 2 were Ped Bike performance measures and data. So this is how you asked for the kind of similar to the pavement and bridge chart for Ped Bike on what's our performance look like. We don't have that forward looking view, but we do have here is our key performance measure that we use for budgeting with the legislature as an agency for active transportation. That is % of all of our urban state highways with sidewalks and bike lanes in fair or better condition that we've had since 2006 and have never met our target. We're still only at 44% complete statewide. There's lots of reasons for that. The not investing enough is a big part of it. But there's also just some real basic mathematical issues of urban areas grow over time. So our denominator is always getting bigger. And then when we jurisdictionally transfer highways to local control, those are usually the ones that were contributing to any good progress performance we had in this measure. And when we give them to the locals, they're not state highways anymore, so we don't get to count them. So some years like 2014, we lose a highway in Eugene that had pretty complete sidewalks and bike lanes, so that the city was willing to take it over, and we get Cornelius Pass in Washington County that has no facilities whatsoever. So there's a lot of issues with it. We went through a process to figure out what are our priorities, what are the measures that we have control over and can help us judge how we're doing as an agency. And where we landed and what we're recommending to OTC for our new key performance measure in the short term is very similar. We're still looking at the percentage of our network that is complete, but we have 2 main changes to that. One, we're just going to be looking at our top priority pedestrian and bicycle corridors so that we have a set number of corridors, set mileage. It doesn't change over time. If it gets jurisdictionally transferred, we can still track it for our % complete for sidewalks and bikeways. And then we are also going to add to that, starting to measure our crosswalk spacing on those priority corridors, because we now finally have a marked crosswalk inventory, and in the blueprint for urban design, soon to be in the highway design manual, we have some recommended crossing spacings for urban facilities. So rather than when it comes to our report for OTC, it'll still look pretty similar with the draft list of priority corridors that we've come up with. We're still around 50% complete for sidewalks and bike lanes. We're about 42% complete for crosswalks. So we'll just be reporting those 2 over time. We also identified some programmatic performance measures for the near term, what we can do with the data we have. So we're going to be looking to our Oregon Transportation Needs and Issues Survey and improving some questions about feeling safe while walking and biking in Oregon, and what are the factors contributing to that. We're also working on improving the representation and diversity of representation and the folks who are responding to that survey, because that's been an issue in the past. And we'll look at mode split, just, good old fashioned census data, because that's what we have for utilization right now. But in the long term, we have these aspirational goals that look beyond the ODOT system, beyond what the data we have right now is that we want to work towards, that is looking at the percent complete for our priority network statewide, because you don't care if you're on an ODOT highway or a local street when you're walking or biking. You just want a complete network to get you from where you're starting to where you're going. So we're going to be working on that in coordination with Department of Land Use and Conservation and Development with their new update to the Oregon Transportation Planning Rules that Karen mentioned earlier. So that's going to be something that we work on for the next few years to start to identify what is that priority state network, figure out how do we get the data to measure this long-term performance measure goal. In safety, we want to go from just percentage of people who feel safe to a crash rate, just like we do for vehicles. So we don't conflate where more people are walking and biking with where there are more crashes, just because there's more people. And the 100 million, how your question of is 100 million pedestrian miles traveled appropriate? I think we've got that in just as a placeholder. Once we actually start to get the data, we'll figure out what a right denominator is for that. So that's where we want to get to, is a crash rate, so we can see where the problem is the greatest, accounting for exposure, but we need to get counts to be able to do that. And mode split also based on counts. So the other piece, this is the performance measure piece. This is going to OTC in a few months for approval. So if there are red flags on particularly these two near-term access measures, those would be good to talk about. Where we're going next is with those long-term measures. We also developed a non-motorized data management strategy that has what is the data need to make each of these measures happen, and what are the things that we need to address to get there. So basically facility inventory and pedestrian and bicycle counts are the two focus areas. And that report steps us through, well, we need to figure out where we're going to store it. We need to figure out what the format of the data is, and we need to figure out how we're going to partner with local agencies to collect it. So next steps for this, like I said, OTC is adopting the new key performance measure this spring, working with Robin Wilcox and her strategic action plan effort to develop our priority multimodal network over this summer and fall to finalize what our priority corridors are that we're going to use for this new key performance measure, coordinating with the LCD on the new transportation planning rule implementation, and how do we start to collect local sidewalk bike lane inventory, because we don't have any of that data in a statewide consistent system right now. We're working with our traffic data folks, have gotten all of the permanent counters that are in the state, whether they're ODOT owned or local, into one database where people can access it, and it's been QA/QC'd, so it's usable. We'll be keeping that up to date, and yeah, are just kind of trying to figure out resourcing to be able to keep the rest of that data implementation plan going forward. So that was more like 10 minutes than 5 minutes, but yeah. So
any quick questions? I think Emma had a quick question in the chat. How do these performance measures align with or differ from the draft climate friendly and equitable communities rules that DLCD is developing?
Oh, yep. So really well, we coordinated with them. So the climate friendly and equitable communities rules, I think is the new name for the transportation planning rules.
Yeah, the transportation planning rule is like a piece of it. And so I'm wondering for the monitor and reporting, there are certain items that I think still need more attention and revision. But I'm wondering if this syncs up with that, or if we have two different state agencies who are kind of going similar but different paths.
No, we were coordinated on it. So that was the things that DLCD is asking for in the performance measures lines up with this long-term with this long-term access performance measure goal. And it also leaves the same questions unanswered that are in this slide and our non-motorized data management plan. So we know in the rule that they're working on that they want to measure the percentage of climate friendly areas with complete sidewalks and bike lanes, but they haven't figured out this piece either. So this is the piece we're going to have to work together on over the next year or so to figure out. So is ODOT going to manage all this data and do the reporting to meet those new administrative rules, or is everybody going to report their own in their own format, which then gets DLCD the data they're looking for, but you can't use it for any of the other like big statewide stuff? That was kind of the point of collecting that data, or how are we going to go about it? So there's still a lot of implementation questions that are unanswered, but they are coordinated efforts. Like probably with that statewide measure, bicycle and pedestrian priority areas, we're thinking that's probably going to end up being defined as the climate friendly communities that are in the DLCD rule. But that's another document that is like 100-some pages long.
Yeah, when you said that, I'm thinking one thing I like about this is that it's staying consistent. I know we have to wrap up, but if the climate friendly areas are changing over time and evolving, then you're going to have the same problem with the jurisdictional transfer issue that we've had before. So we can talk more offline or think about that, but I just want to make sure that coordination is happening. It sounds like it is, but it's going to take time to do it right. And there's implementation issues that still need to be resolved, which is a very common theme.
Baby steps.
Thank you.
Yeah, this was a great update, Jessica. So looking forward to more of this, more updates on this in the future. So with that, I want to thank everybody for their time and contributing to this meeting today, and have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you next month. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.